Hello, my fellow grinders. It is me, the Wormkeeper, back here today to talk about an idea that I had while doing Spire the Watcher dungeon not too long ago. And that is the idea of allowing players to change their elemental damage types on certain weapons. Now, this idea came to me because I was playing Spire the Watcher, really hoping I could get a god roll on the long arm, which I'm still waiting on, by the way. But I was sitting there, I'm like, it's Arc. Like, I wish I could have a void long arm. That way I could use volatile rounds, or I wish I could have a solar long arm so that I could synergize it with barrier piercing radiance or some stuff like that. And that's when the idea came to me of, hey, what if we actually allowed players to change elemental damage types? Now, I am well aware that Bungie will probably never do this. Okay, so you can go in the comments and say, yeah, it's a neat idea, Bungie won't do it. I know they probably won't. But again, this is food for thought for every single one of y'all watching. Food for thought, right? However, I don't think that the elemental damage type switching should just be unlimited. Okay, there's some limitations and stuff like that, which we'll talk about limitations later on in the video. But of course, let's talk about the reason why Bungie should do this. And the reason why is quite simply that there are weapon archetypes that do not have every single element associated with them. Okay, now I'm going to use 360 round per minute auto rifles, high impact auto rifles, as a kind of antithetical example of this. Okay, because 360 round per minute auto rifles, we have Age Old Bond, which is void. We have Cressura Mellow, which is solar. We have Come to Pass, which is arc. We have Lodebrock, which is kinetic, and then we have Herod C, which is stasis. So we have basically 5 of the 6 damage types available to this weapon. Okay, and yes, the perks are different. It's not all the same perks, blah 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 blah. But this is a class weapon that has all these different damage archetypes in it, which is great. This is exactly what we want. But then you look at something like 300 round per minute sidearms. 300 round per minute sidearms, there is, let's see here, off the top of my head, outside of the exotics, we'll exclude exotics for right now. There is a kinetic allied demand. There is a arc one from the Crucible, the Keening. There is, goodness, I cannot think of any other 300 round per minute sidearms. Let me know in the comments if there's other 300 round per minute sidearms that fit outside of the kinetic and the arc slots. But the point is, I can't, if I can't sit here and recall, somebody who plays Destiny all the time is very familiar with almost all the weapons in the game. I can't recall if there is a weapon of a certain archetype in here. We probably need more weapons in that archetype. Allowing players to change the damage would help with that, right? It would help to mitigate the amount of wanting and wishing, oh, I really hope that they add a stasis sidearm that is 300 rounds per minute in the future, just for an example. So that's why we need it. But of course, we couldn't just have this without certain limitations, and the limitations are the key factor, when determining these, because the limitations would need to be, kind of strict, because we have a lot of elemental damage perks, or subclass synergizing perks, stuff like that, blah blah blah, that just wouldn't work well if we had this system. So starting off with probably the most blatantly obvious, what would stop you from changing elemental damage types on a weapon if it was exotic. Okay, I think exotic weapons, they fit a very, very particular criteria. They often synergize with our subclasses very, very well. Take Sunshot or Prometheus Lens, for example. These two weapons are very, very good as solar weapons, but they wouldn't make sense as another damage type. You can't change Sunshot to Void Shot, or to Lightning Shot. It doesn't make sense. So exotics, of course, would be just completely excluded from the list. However, the next thing that would prevent players from just changing it to anything would be the separation between the dark and the light energy types, or basically kinetic, strand, stasis, and void, solar, and arc. Because like I said, that would be just confusing. Okay, you have a funnel web and you want to make it, I don't know, strand, for example. I think it would be very, very difficult, and it wouldn't make a lot of sense to move it to, oh, I have, funnel web here, and then it just moves to a whole nother slot after, changing the energy type, however that would be. That's just doesn't make sense. So, that would be another limitation of it. If you have a strand weapon that you want to change to kinetic, sure. If you have a void weapon that you want to change to solar, sure. But if you have a arc weapon that you want to change to stasis, no, can't do that. Those are like obviously the two most blatant reasons, or would be the two most blatant exceptions to the rule, or to the ability to change the elemental damage types. Now, the third one is a little bit, I would say, more lenient on, how it could work. But that is weapons that have subclass synergizing perks on them. Okay, things like Volt Shot, Incandescent, Headstone. What is it? Volt Shot, Incandescent, Headstone, Hatchling. Trying to think of all. Destabilizing rounds, Repulsor Brace. All these perks that weapons have on them that allow them to synergize with your subclass. I think that we could potentially work around these quite well. Like initially, whenever I was thinking, I was like, no, we just exclude those from the list. If a weapon rolls with Incandescent, you can't change the damage type. But I think that maybe because so many weapons now are being added with those perks on it, maybe that wouldn't be the best idea. And instead, have it so that we have, a damage specific perk, whatever, that switches out. Okay, so let's say I have the Aikilos SMG, and it is, of course, arc. It can get Volt Shot on it. Why not? Okay, well, like, oh man, I love solar, for example, and I don't want to go out and get a borrowed time because borrowed time takes forever to grind for, blah, 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 whatever your reasoning is, right? So I go to the relic on Mars or something, just wherever you do it at, and I go to the to re-roll the damage type. Okay, so I go and I re-roll the damage type, and it has, let's say, Feeding Frenzy Volt Shot on the arc version of it. When I re-roll it to the solar, it would change Volt Shot to Incandescent. Or if I change the void, it would change the void one to either Repulsor Brace or Destabilizing Rounds. It would change it to one of those. I think that could be a potentially, viable option. I know it'd probably be difficult on Bungie's end to make it work, but there's a lot of things that are difficult for Bungie to make work, and they do make it work. So I think that doing this could actually be a really, really neat idea because, number one, the weapons that don't have subclass synergizing perks with them, such as the long arm doesn't have any subclass synergizing perks. Literally, they're getting no benefit outside of the ability to break shields a little bit faster, right? And of course, if you have certain aspects or fragments that, allow you to have volatile rounds or, something along those lines. I apologize. I lost my train of thought there. But, something, those weapons that don't have subclass synergizing perks would literally almost not change at all. And if they, when they do change, they're not going to change in some major way that is, broken or busted or, breaks the game or anything like that, right? Of course, with the weapons that can change their elemental synergizing perks, like Volt Shot to Incandescent, that it'll change the way the weapon performs, but not tremendously, because here's the thing, like Incandescent, for example, it's a good perk, but it is not incredibly powerful. I would say Incandescent is on the same level as Destabilizing Rounds, which is, almost on the same level as Volt Shot. I think Volt Shot is just the ability to jolt the target and shock everything around it is kind of insane. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets a nerf in the future. Just going to point that out. But I think that, changing these elemental subclass specific perks to another elemental subclass specific perk really wouldn't be that big of a deal. And I know it'd be difficult for Bungie to do, but I know they could do it and they could deliver on it quite well. But yeah, that's it for the kind of the stipulations, because there's nothing else I can think of that would, obviously, no, we can't change the damage archetype on certain legendary weapons because it would be too busted. I don't know. I can't think of anything else. But of course, if you could think of something, let me know what you think in the comments, about that, because I want to hear your thoughts on elemental damage type switching. But yeah, the last thing that I want to talk about is, of course, a minor thing, but that'd be how and where we actually change the elemental damage type. Number one, I think that the most important thing about changing the actual elemental damage type would be that you have to go to a certain location and you have to spend a pretty hefty amount of materials to actually change out your weapon's element, because we have things like hard light and the sniper Borealis that can change elements on the go, and we don't want to I don't want to say invalidate, but we don't want to, you know, ruin those weapons potential, right? We don't want to make it where you know, there's no reason to run with hard light anymore, because now I can just change the damage type on my whatever on the go, you know. So I think that having players have to go to like the Enclave, for example, to actually change the elemental damage type would be a great idea, because, you know, if you're doing a day one raid, for example, and it's like, oh, like I really need, you know, void, but my weapon's arc, well, let me just change it in the menu real quick. No, like that wouldn't work. The same thing in a Grandmaster Nightfall, you know, oh, you know, I can't change my damage type, so, you know, I'm not gonna be able to break these shields, but let me just change it real quick and we'll be good. No. Like, I definitely think that should be limited. And also, I think that it should be limited on the amount of times you can change it. You know, I don't think that, okay, well, you know, for this bounty, I need solar kills. I'm just gonna go change the solar real quick and come back, blah, blah, blah. I think it should be a pretty hefty expense. You know, if you have, for example, long arm with, you know, rapid hit dragonfly, and you really want it to be solar, you better really want it to be solar, because like I'm thinking like at least an ascendant shard or ascendant alloy or something like that should be factored into the cost. Maybe, you know, like 500 legendary shards, which sounds insane. Maybe not that many, maybe 100 legendary shards, you know, 75,000 glimmer, and 20 enhancement cores, just for an example. I think that those would be good, like good prices, because again, you wouldn't want players to switch on the go, on the fly all the time. You know, you'd want players to put thought into how they're going to manage their elemental damage type. Like, hey, you know, I got funnel web here, but I'm a arc main, you know, and so I'd really prefer it to be arc. This would synergize with, you know, the rest of my build, you know, and making orb stuff like that. So I can change it to arc, but if I change it to arc, I'm not really going to want to change it back to void, because that's going to be expensive and I've already changed it once. But yeah, anyways, at this point, I've kind of run out of ideas, but yeah, that's just what I was thinking about the other night. Let me know your guys' thoughts on the ability to change elemental damage types in Destiny 2. Like, do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you think Bungie should implement it? If not, tell me why, because I do like to read y'all's comments if you disagree with me, because a lot of y'all make really good points. But yeah, that's it for me, guys. Of course, if you like the video, please drop a like. Helps the channel out a lot. And subscribe for more daily Destiny content. And hey, watch this video that you see on screen here, because YouTube thinks you will like it. Bye, guys.